Folks, this is going to be a fantastic Leading Your Best Life, and it's come out of our BlokesTalk Beachside meetings where we're talking about men's mental health and well-being. And I'm going to introduce you to Alan Park. He's a good friend of one of the founders of BlokesTalk Beachside, Paul Robinson. And it really is going to be a great journey because Alan's put a fantastic paper together that we're happy to share with you. But before we even get to that, Alan, welcome to Leading Your Best Life.
Great to be here. Nice to see you, Leigh.
Mate, talking of leading your best life, and as I say, you were fantastically honest and open and revealing in the presentation you did and the paper that you've written. But before we get to the paper, let's talk firstly about the Alan Park journey. Where were you born? What's been your journey to get to this age now of 25 like you are?
Thanks for the flattery. I'll slip you the 100 later.
Like your hair, I like your hair, by the way. It's very neat compared. I notice hair for some reason. I don't know why that is. Beautiful hair you have, by the way. Anyway, the journey.
The journey. Well, it's a long journey, really. I was born and brought up in South Wales. And
South Wales in the UK.
in the UK.
Oh wow! Does that mean you have a good singing voice like Tom Jones?
I wish I did. It was, but that's one of the characteristics of Wales. They say you get one Welshman, you've got a poet. You put two together, you've got a choir.
Oh, beautiful.
So it's a lovely place. But I was brought up on a farm there. My parents, my two brothers and sister, and we emigrated to Australia on the assisted passage after I'd been at school in Wales, and my father had to have a job, so he'd been a farmer all of his life. So at the age of in his 40s, we sold up everything, put everything in a few trunks. Said goodbye to probably over 40 first cousins, and got on the boat. I'm a boat person, and we came out to WA, went to Corrigan, which was as far away from Wales as you can get.
The colour, I can think straight away, the colour from the green of Wales to the brown of Corrigan.
Oh, that's right. And coming out just at the end of summer as well. My mother would have walked home. So we stayed out there because we had to. My father had to have a job to come out here. There was none of the support that migrants get today. Got rid of the accent as quickly as I could. After you get a lot of bullying and beaten up at school. That was the time of Nino Carlotta. They're a weird mob.
Yeah.
So you go barefoot, don't go to school in socks and sandals, which is a dead giveaway. And then gradually...
That's right. The socks and sandals give you a dead giveaway, exactly.
Out in Babacan, it's pretty rough there. So then we came back to Perth. And
so you were how old were you at this point?
I'd been in year 2 in Wales, and then came out here. So my brothers were 10 years plus older than me. They got jobs, and my father was a labourer. My mother cleaned houses, and we got on with it far better today than what I would have been if I'd stayed in Wales.
Absolutely. But your age at the time was what? Did you say you were 8 or you're younger?
9.
9. Yeah. So it's young. So in many ways, that's, as you said, it's a major kind of trauma and upset right there to be taken from the green of Wales to the middle of nowhere. And as you say, then culturally, the bullying or the fit in or else and all of that stuff. I mean, talk about, as you show that they're a weird mob. Really talks about the difficulties migrants had in those days, and as you say, and even today, but the conditions, of course, are way better. So then you came to Perth. Where did you settle in Perth at that point?
We settled in Guildford, moved around a lot. And then I was the first to go to university because my father said, look, we've come out here, we're Australians first, Welsh second. I want you to get an education, don't want you to work with a shovel like I did. And they were very, very supportive, and we blended in. My parents never lost their accents. My siblings and I did. And although I can put it on a little bit if you give me some time here, see?
Yeah, you can drift into it very quickly.
Yeah, and it's good to have that. It's going back to Wales. It's you do notice the difference it is like coming home. So I went to university, graduated in the 70s.
What course did you choose?
I chose economics.
What made you choose that?
I have no idea. My brother, who's 10 years older than me, I always looked up to him and asked him, what should I do? And he said, well, if you do economics, you get into business and, you can be a managing director. Well, that didn't happen. And I said, well, what about an accountant? He said, oh, no, you'll be adding up numbers all day. Don't want to do that. What about a lawyer? Oh, no, you have to read too much. He had no idea, of course. He didn't go to high school or university.
Yeah.
So I took
just goes to show, we talk about crucial conversations, how there are certain 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute conversations just like that can actually shape people's lives. And obviously your brother, even though he didn't know, he was providing some guidance which in that 1 or 2 minute conversation shaped your life, eh?
Oh yeah, I mean he was my hero and still is. But it was, in hindsight, it led me by accident into merchant banking. I'd started with National Mutual Life in Perth and was in their economics and investment area. And then they needed somebody in their partly owned merchant bank with Citibank. So I moved into there and actually enjoyed the work, doing trading in bonds and other instruments, and then gradually got back into it. Perth had over 20 merchant banks in the 70s.
Amazing.
And it was just how the market was evolving. And now it's evolved to essentially all the big trading banks. You have different things now. You have private equity fund managers, as you know, and different things like that. And you have boutique advisors. The whole landscape has changed. And I don't know if it's for the better, but everything evolves.
Everything evolves. That's true. So the world of merchant banking, what was it you liked about it?
It was the analytical side of it. And I really enjoyed the work. You're analyzing companies, you're looking at raising equity and debt for them. There's some big numbers involved. It was a pretty glamorous area to be in from the outside. But it used everything that I'd studied. It used the economics, it used the accounting, because I went back and did an MBA after about 10 years, which is the better way to do it, and learned a lot from that. And it was, I was a workaholic. I just enjoyed going to work every day, enjoyed getting the business, analysing it, and getting on with it.
Would you, when you're a student, would you have called yourself a workaholic as a student as well in terms of that level?
Definitely not.
No. But the work you then clicked in the work environment to become a workaholic.
Yes. Yeah, I loved it. And it was one of those things that you needed to get on. You had to put in the hours.
Yep.
And the young men and women today, they put in extraordinary hours, not only in merchant or investment banking, as they're calling it now, but the accountants and the lawyers, they're cannon fodder in a lot of cases. They'll be working till midnight and beyond.
Goodness gracious. Talk about, there's no such thing as work-life balance there.
No. And it's hard because nobody trains you to be a manager as an accountant, a merchant banker, or a lawyer.
Mm,
And the partners make pretty good money.
mm.
There's you get so few opportunities that you've got to make everyone a winner, because you might only do 2 or 3 big deals a year, but if you don't make them, you make very little, and then your job's on the line.
So a lot of it is performance based or incentive based. If you get the deal, you get a bonus of some kind. If you don't get the deal, well, you're on base wage. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, that's right. And many of the bonuses are sort of guaranteed, but when you add up what you get paid on an hourly basis, it's probably not much different to the junior accountants and the lawyers that you get. There are the exceptions, Macquarie Bank and Goldman Sachs are the ones who are consistently in the news. But it's changed. When bonuses never used to get paid in banking, and when they started to be paid in the 80s, they were quite modest. But I remember there was one merchant banker, I can't remember his name now, but very high profile. And he said, look, paying bonuses in the finance industry is a recipe for disaster. He said, you can't incentivize this. He said, it's encouraging all the wrong behavior. And I actually think he's right. The GFC, I think, is testimony to that. The people work for their bonus now. They don't work for the client. As one of my mentors said, he said, we prosper as our clients prosper, and we don't do them any favors by getting them into bad deals. And you've got to be prepared to tell them to walk away.
Well, you're reminding me, a good mate of mine I went to uni with ended up a Shadow Attorney General in Victoria, a guy called Neil Cole, and he rang me after the Rothwell's collapse here in WA and said, mate, what's been the impact over there? I said, well, mate, people are very unhappy. That's a lot of the money that could have gone towards hospitals or schools or roads or a whole lot of other things as well. Mate, when it comes out and what's happened in Victoria, that will make what's happened in West Australia look like peanuts. And of course, that was when the Tricontinental, which was essentially, I think, a semi-merchant banking arm of the State Bank of Victoria, the whole State Bank of Victoria collapsed with pyramid building society. And of course, way more than $500 million was lost. But a lot of it was based on exactly what you said there, of incentivizing people to do deals and give out loans on super high risk people, from what I understand. So, as you say, rewarding the wrong or the risky behaviours.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not hard to understand, because you've got a highly motivated person working very hard under a lot of great pressure. You've got a team of people working with them. And you put maybe 6 months into it and you don't get the deal, or the deal doesn't happen. You've backed the wrong horse. They'll do anything to get it to work. And then you combine that with a very aggressive company, and they want to do the deal as well, because there's no growth left in their industry, and they feel that, we'll just diversify, which can be a lot of smoke and mirrors, as you no doubt aware. So they pay over the top, and the research that has been done in that area shows typically that companies pay over the top. You've only got to look at Wesfarmers when they took over Coles. I think they trashed something like $8 or $9 billion of shareholder value. It just wasn't worth what they paid for it. But the forecasts don't work out, and that's always uncertain when you're looking in the future.
That's right. The blue sky. One of my mates floated his company on the London Stock Exchange, and he says, I can't believe there's any blue sky left, because I thought I'd sold it all. It's like he's a character, of course. So let's talk about that, because as you say, you love the work, flying around the world, and you talked about being in London and a whole range of places. So maybe talk about that before we talk about your decision to then retire and what happened then.
Well, I was very fortunate in the banking because I got exposed to a lot of different products like project financing of property and natural resource projects, um, tax-effective financing, leverage leasing, leasing of aircraft, that sort of thing, and buildings.
Big numbers.
There was a leverage lease done of the Wacker, for example, which is not something that people would have known about. Leverage leasing of the vehicle car fleets owned by governments, just to take it off balance sheet and take the funding away. Probably not a good idea in hindsight. Financing of infrastructure, power plants, that type of thing. And my travel was mainly to Melbourne and Sydney, and I probably travelled about 90 days a year, very little of it overseas. And then at the end of my career, which was with Rothschild in Sydney, when they decided they wanted out of the business, except for the high-profile mergers and acquisition stuff, they asked me to go to London and work for the parent company. And, that involved quite a lot of overseas travel based in London, because there's no mines in London. It's in the States and Europe and Africa. So it was the last 6 years of my career, really, it was a great place to be. But then after going there 2 years into it, the GFC came. And it's a lot different when you're on the inside to what you read in the newspapers. And I think a lot of that could have been prevented by the newspaper reporting. The media really didn't help at all.
But anyway, let's talk about you as a human being. By this stage, you of course are married. You've got children. So as you move towards retirement, and you've been living this life, I imagine your family's been traveling or moving to different parts as Sydney or the world with you. As you're moving towards this retirement and the topic that we want to kind of get to here, what's going through your mind, as you say, moving into your 50s and mid 50s?
I didn't plan for retirement until maybe 3 years before the end. And it surprised me, because working at National Mutual Life, when I first went into the company, I went into a salesman course to sell life insurance. And it was I think it was something like a 6-week course to sell life insurance. And one of the things there they said was, look, you'll find that people don't plan for their retirement until maybe the 5 years of their working life. So my plan for retirement was essentially financial, and the fact that I had some outside interests. I loved France and all things French. Absolutely beautiful country. Loved the language, the culture. And so I was going to, learn or upgrade my French speaking. And I took quite a few photographs, but just really happy snaps, holiday snaps. And I thought, well, I might like to do that. I love golf. And I thought, well, it'll just happen. And then, of course, when I decided, look, I've had enough. I was 60. I was tired of flying around, and had enough money to retire on. So I just pulled the pin, which I would, as we've spoken before, I'd recommend that people transition to retirement and really plan during that period to do it. It's, time is our most precious resource, and you don't have a lot of it left after you retire. So you really need to work out what you do with it every day.
And as you say so beautifully, you'd planned financially, but you actually hadn't really, you had a vague idea of what you might do lifestyle wise. But in fact, I think you've made the point that it'll just happen. but you found out that it didn't just happen.
No, it didn't. It was I really didn't have a purpose anymore. There was no meaning in life. I'd lost my identity. A lot of people, when you first meet them, they say, "Oh, g'day, mate. What do you do?" And you say, "Well, I'm retired." So they think, "Oh, so you sit in the chair, you go on cruises around the world, spend the kids' inheritance, so you do nothing." And it's actually quite common, but not everybody's like that. There are people who actually do that. They travel 4 times a year or more. They play golf, look after the grandkids. They're having a ball.
But this is the important point. I've just made a note as you were talking. I lost my purpose, my meaning, my identity, and those 3 core components of a human being, which you brought up in the discussion the other night. You get to the point of, so who am I? Who am I if I'm not a merchant banker? And the very thing there of I do nothing. Therefore, does that mean I am nothing?
Yeah.
So how does that resonate with you when I say those things?
Looking back, it's so true. And it's a funny feeling, because you can sit on your veranda or your balcony, whatever, and you can look out and you think, well, what am I going to do today? What do I have to do today? And if you don't have to do anything, there's nothing pushing you forward, and there's nothing to go towards. And as one of the that Dr. Jordan Peterson said, he said, look, you really need a goal to work towards. It's never a linear path. It's ups and downs as you make your way. He said, but you've got to have something behind you as well to let you think, well, hang on, I've got to do this, because if I don't, there's a problem. I'm going to do my tax because I'll get a refund or whatever it might be, but gee, if I don't do it, I'm going to get fined. So you have something to motivate you, but motivation's not all about a goal. It's about an understanding and awareness of what's waiting for you eventually if you don't do it.
Let's talk about because you touched on this around, I don't have something to do today. Talk about the symptoms. What started happening to you? What was your world like, your inner world, in the 6 months to 12 months and beyond of you retiring? So you retired. What started to happen over the next 6 to 12 months to you personally, in terms of your thinking, in terms of your health, in terms of your happiness, and so on?
The main physical syndrome or symptom was fatigue. I would sleep till lunchtime, get up, have lunch. I might go for a walk, but then I'd sleep in the afternoon, watch television. I would be physically exhausted. Headaches were common. And then I think that it was because my body just had started to shut down. My brain was perhaps telling it not to produce things like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, which is one of the 3 causes that they put to depression, because nobody really understands what is the cause, and it might be a combination of those 3. But for me, it was the physical tiredness. I just wanted to sleep. And when you sleep, it's because you want to shut out the world, I think. You don't want to be awake and think, how worthless am I? This is awful. I don't know what to do. All the negative thoughts. You don't want to see anybody, because then they're going to say, well, what do you do? You can't share anything with them, because in my case, a lot of my friends, or most of my friends, were still working. So it's a totally different environment to be in. You're 18 years old again, wondering, what am I going to do for the rest of my life, or my career, let alone the rest of my life?
Boy, oh boy. And as you say, it's that interesting relationship. You go, is the chicken and the egg? Is it the thoughts that then lead to the serotonin, the dopamine, and the oxytocin not being produced? Or is it the oxytocin and dopamine that's not produced that lead to the thoughts? But either way, there's that interplay, that dance that goes on, that the less serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, then the worse the thinking can become, can't it?
Yeah, I think it is. And I don't think that the medicos, and well, there's two areas here. There's two treatments. One is through conventional medicine, general practice, and the like, and the other is through the psychologist approach. So it's either drugs or therapy.
Mm.
I don't think that there's any conclusive evidence as to what causes it, and indeed, other people have different. It starts differently, but in my case, I really think it was the fatigue.
Mm. Mm.
Something I'd never experienced before, because I used to survive on very little sleep.
Mm.
So if you're working until midnight and later, and you're up again at 6 o'clock in the morning, you may not have slept during the night. There might have been phone calls that interrupt your sleep through the night. You just get used to living like that.
Mm.
Um,
As you know, our good friend Dr. Peter Simons, put a book together on this called The Brain Fuel Depletion, where he was talking so much about the relationship with the neurotransmitters, and that if you aren't sleeping enough and recovering enough, that if you're not using the producing serotonin and dopamine, then you start to live on adrenaline, and so you can survive on adrenaline, but it's almost like eventually there's a crash, because the adrenaline isn't the same quality, or it's not a happy chemical. It's almost an aggressive. It's the fight or flight sympathetic nervous system response. So I'm wondering there with you, small amounts of sleep, sleep disturbed with phone calls, but you're living because you've got the deal and it's exciting. Well, I wonder whether you're actually living on, by that stage, adrenaline, and that when you did retire, there was this kind of crash going, well, somehow the body needs to then, through sleep, try and replenish the serotonin and dopamine. What are your thoughts around that?
yes, I think that's the case. I think in my case, I think that the cause of it was my body wasn't producing those neurochemicals. And you get very low mood, and it becomes pretty much a depression spiral. You just keep going down. It gets worse and worse. The more tired you get, the more hopeless you feel, the more worthless you are. It just goes on and on. And then the drugs in 60% of the cases, according to some of the studies in the Lancet, or set out in the Lancet, 60% of both the drugs and the people who use the therapy, they recover fully. And we're talking here about clinical depression, not just feeling sadness, and not to the stage of bipolar disease and other serious mental illnesses that many people might have from birth.
Yeah.
And
so, sorry, continue. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it also depends a bit on your personality. I mean, the Greeks used to talk about melancholia because they realized that some people were just sad men and women. Other people are, very active, outgoing, they're Tigger on steroids. I've got some friends like that, and it's just fantastic to watch them. You just feel energized while you're around those sort of people. And I know other people who are so flat and morose that you think, gee, that poor person, they really need to buck up. But they're not unhappy. They just don't have the energy that other people, I mean, like you as well, the energy that you exude.
Until I crash, of course, then you just don't see that part. I just go and hide for a day or two or three.
We'll keep that quiet.
Yeah, exactly. But the beautiful thing is what you've done in this paper, Alan, that you had written. It's here. I'm going to put the links to it in our post so that people can go through it. And as you say, in the paper, you mentioned that there's like a number of questions. Let's talk about what action did you take? How long did it take you to say, I need some professional help? I need to do something about this.
After I'd been feeling like this for, I can't remember the exact time, maybe 3 or 6 months, I thought, well, I've got to get some help here. I've got to get some drugs because
And by the way, how's your wife dealing with you at this stage? Because she's obviously noticed a different person than the one that was working.
Yes, well, I mean, wives suddenly find when their husband retires that here's this bloke who used to leave at any time in the morning and then come home at whatever, and then they have their own life to live. And then all of a sudden, here's this sad bloke that won't get up until, towards lunchtime.
Yeah.
And, they've got their own family or they've got their own friends to go out with in their own life that they lead, just like when we have our working life. So she found it really hard. There's not a lot out there as far as how do you help a person who's depressed, because the reality is you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped or who doesn't know how to be helped. So going to the GP said, okay, we'll fill out this form, which is an indicator to see if the grade of depression that you have, it's the best the psychs have got, and it's also a requirement in order to get subsidized treatment. You could get 10 subsidized sessions from a psychologist, which is pretty good because it's expensive depending on how many times you have to go and see them.
Sure.
But I didn't know what questions to ask. When the doctor says to you, what's your plan? What do you want to get out of this? What do you want to fix? And you think, well, my memory bank's been wiped. I don't know who I am anymore. I just want to be normal, whatever that is. I just want to know what normal was. I can't really see the point of going on here. But they say they don't tell you what different therapies are available. They don't typically tell you to go to a psychiatrist because the psychiatrists are best at determining the medication. Because I tried 3, none of them worked. Some ranged from accentuating the sleeping. They sort of really made me calm. You're sort of almost comatose. So they adjust the quantity that you take, and then another one set my brain on fire. It was really pretty scary because they're it's psychotherapy. It clues in the word.
Yes.
So after trying that for a while and then going to a psychiatrist, he says, look, if you've been going to psychologists for this length of time, he said, I can't believe they're still trying to treat you. He said, you need to be medicated. And I didn't want to be medicated because I tried all that sort of stuff. And then there was that rather unfortunate time when I was particularly depressed and phoned one of the helplines looking for some help. Why am I feeling like this? And then the police arriving at my door and wanting to take me away. And then I thought, well, I've got to do something better here. And I chanced upon, when I was looking for an answer for this, because I read a lot, I looked on the internet for, help with depression, lots of commentary, lots of gurus. But then I looked at the lectures that Dr. Jordan Peterson had, and he'd had depression, and I think he still suffers from it.
Hasn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So he knows how you feel. And he was the one that, where I make that comment, it's like your dog died every day. And I thought, yeah, it is. There's Lassie or whoever, and every day that's how you feel. You've lost your best mate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, and then he said, look, it's really bad. You're totally depleted of all of the feel-good chemicals. And if the drugs aren't working for you, He said, you've got to have a reason to get up in the morning. He said, if you can't pick one, if you don't have one, just pick the least worst. Just get on with it. Have a schedule. Get up at the same time every day. Don't sleep until lunchtime. And he said, after a while, he said, there's the power of small incremental achievements. And he said, your body, if you tick off, even if you tick off one of the things that you had to do that day, he said, it's a win. He said, so take it. And he said, after 3 or 4 weeks, if your body's going to be producing the chemicals again, it'll start to work for you. And it did.
Yeah. Amazing.
Whether that's a coincidence or whatever, but I got back on track again. I was waking up at the right times, and I got moving, and then I was able to concentrate, because one of the other symptoms of depression for me was the inability to focus or to concentrate. Just wasn't possible. I could read a page and not even know what the book was called. It's pretty hard stuff.
So that those beautiful points of Jordan Peterson of a reason to get up in the morning. So in your case, what was the reason you gave yourself to get up in the morning?
The reason for me was photography, because I joined a camera club in North Sydney, and they were there was a group of us. We called ourselves the Sunrise Group. Nice. So we'd go down half an hour before sunrise on the northern beaches, and there was a lovely guy there, Glenn, who set up my tripod and my camera, told me what the basics were, and totally changed my understanding of the technical side of photography. And then we'd have breakfast afterwards, share our photographs, get them printed. So that was something to get up for, because it's a lovely time of the day. That Dawn, I know you run the pod down at the beach.
Yes.
But that was the thing that did it for me. Beautiful.
Well, there you go. There's so many things in what you've just said. I think I touched on it with you the other day. Huberman, Andrew Huberman, the Stanford guy, was talking about some of the research of mental health and seeing the sunrise and or sunset. The difference between not seeing that, you can imagine the kids eating pizzas, drinking cans of Coke, playing computer games all night. So their sleep is all out of whack. They don't get to see the morning. They don't get in touch with nature, and they wonder why there's mental health issues. Versus in your case, there's a couple of things going on. One, you're seeing the sunrise. 2, you're in a group. 3, you're learning. And Glenn becomes almost like coach, mentor. And then the thing that we find in the research around mental health in the power of swimming groups is the swim is 50% of it, but it's the social connection, the banter, the friendship, the positivity of before the swim, during the swim, after the swim at the coffee shop. And of course, my master's thesis, I'll never forget the day I found an article in the medical library talking about social support systems, the importance of social support systems and mental health and well-being. And so, yes, we have family, but as you say, by this stage, your kids are gone, your wife's doing her own thing, and they're not going to give you that on a daily basis, those touch points of the banter. So when you mix almost the synergy or talking about economics, the exponential, the compounding effect of reason to get up, I've got to get up because I'm meeting the group, I see the sunrise, I'm taking beautiful photographs and learning as I'm doing it. Glenn's giving me the reinforcement. I'm seeing these beautiful photos and go, wow, shit, it's a new purpose. And then the social connection and the debriefing and the fun afterwards, all of those things create serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin. Is that your experience?
Absolutely. And I think all those 3 things were very important. I didn't appreciate it at the time, the social connection. I mean, when you're working, at least when you're not working from home, which is the modern way now, but you're around people, you take it for granted.
Yes.
it's important that there are the people who are around you. There has to be some sort of connection, and whether it's swimming or, in my case, photography and the creativity of that. It's important that there's that connection as well.
Yes. Yes.
So, you know, very much it's the social side of it. We're social animals, as gets repeated all the time. We need each other. And I think there's something as well that these people may not have been your best friends when you started out, but sometimes it's a lot easier talking to not so much a stranger, but someone who looks as if, you know, they don't really know you. You know a little bit about each other, but then if you just start to talk, and if the person is there, I mean, my father always said, you know, there's a lot of good in everyone. You know, if somebody's having a bad day, you think, you know, gee, mate, you know, not so much come and give me a hug, which if that floats your boat, that's great. It's the power of a hug is fantastic, but you've got somebody who's there to genuinely, you know, feel some empathy for you, and then you think, well, you know, gee, some people do care, and even a stranger might care. Sorry, that's my rain parrot telling me it's going to collapse on us.
How useful, yeah.
It is. It's a great weather app called Rain Parrot.
Is it? Okay, good.
It just shouts at you.
Is it?
It gives you 5 minutes to get to shelter.
Well, thank you. That's a bonus. That's a piece of bonus information that we didn't plan on. Mate, it's fantastic. I'm just going to go back to your paper. So I'm going to go beside, and of course, in the paper, you've got some of these. These are some of your photos that you've then turned into almost works of art, which are marvelous. You talked about a range of points. I think let's just run through some of these action points that you made here on the article of what you tell your younger self. You've touched on a couple of them, but let's go through them anyway. Just just talk about it to the people that are listening, because I thought these were really valuable points.
Yeah. We've spoken about transition gradually to retirement.
Yeah.
So if you can do it part-time, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Really plan it. I didn't really have any goals other than financial goals and perhaps where we were going to end up living, which finally eventuated after 20 years of promising my wife we're going to be in Perth, and we finally did get back here. The purpose in life, I can't emphasize that you know, any more. You've got to have some meaning. That's the reason you get up in the morning. The schedule, even if it's just to write down 3 things every day, and hopefully if you plan a bit more, because I said before that time's our most precious resource. I'm 72 now. On the statistics, I've got 10 years left. 10 years times 12, that's 120 months. And hopefully I get to play out the full game and don't get dragged by the coach before the end, and might even get a bit of time on. But you've got 120 months to do the things that you wanted to do, if that's what you want to do. Other people are quite happy just leaving their future to others. And if that works for you, that's great. We're not all the same. Other people, I've still got friends who aren't giving up work. There's busy work. Busy work helps to start if you're depressed, because activity's the antidote to depression. So if you can get busy, that's great. But after a while, if you're doing tasks that don't mean anything to you, well, all you are is busy. You're not really getting any fulfillment in life and getting any real joy in life. So the other thing, if you are feeling like you have a real depression problem, go to a GP. the drugs.
Let's just deal with that for a second, because just for a lot of people, one of the definitions of clinical depression is having suicidal ideation. In other words, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. Literally going, I want to either I feel the world's going to be better off without me. People don't want me around. I'm not worthy. How would I go about actually killing myself? When a person starts to think that way on a regular basis, or even, I don't know how many times I need to think about it, but I mean, you can maybe tell me, but that's, I think, one of the key definitions of clinical depression. When you start thinking, I should take myself out of play here, that's the time. And that's why I make the point, even at BlokesTalk Beachside, you may think that, but your grandkids and your kids and the people who love you actually don't think that. As much as if you've got to that bullshit thought, which I say, it's a bit like the iPhone. At that point, you've got a bug in your system, because that's the sign of clinical depression, and that's certainly the time to go and talk to a doctor, if not before. What are your thoughts and responses to that?
The questionnaire they give you, which is all very well thought out, has about 10 areas. And after you've done it a few times, you pick up what the areas. But they look for certain serious things. Like, first of all, there's a feeling of if you feel helpless, if you feel worthless. Some people say they feel trapped. They don't know what to do. Fatigue's a big one, which was for me. Loss of libido, trouble sleeping, either too much or too little, insomnia, weight. You either put on a lot of weight, or you're almost anorexic. And then you get into one of the last ones, for me anyway, was thoughts of suicide. And anyone can say, oh, gee, maybe I should commit suicide, but perhaps that's just a thought. But when you actually start to research it, and when you actually buy, if there's any paraphernalia that's required to go ahead with it, and then you start to think, and you actually write your send-off letter, I mean, that's really
yeah.
You're now getting ready to jump. But what I would suggest is that when someone's starting to feel helpless and worthless, world would be better off without me, have that little bit of a thought, I can't sleep. If you're hitting 5 of those areas out of the 10, then they'll say, and you're like that for 2 weeks continuously.
Yes, 2
weeks. That's the test they use for clinical depression. And then there's quite a continuum. And the trick is to get it before it gets to that stage.
Because clearly, as you say, the longer that's gone on, and we had a situation where a person in our circle was grieving so much about a situation that had happened in their life. By the time they actually got significant treatment, the doctors had found that the person had literally stopped producing serotonin and dopamine, whatever the part of the brain, amygdala or hippocampus or whatever it is that produces it, to the point where they literally had to try and shock the brain back into producing serotonin and dopamine, which, as it works out, they were able to do. And he's now on a very good journey of recovery. But he hung on for so long, trying to tough it out on his own, and I can do this, and that it's like the muscle atrophying. In this case, whatever the organ or part of the brain that produces serotonin and dopamine, it had atrophied. And of course, that you don't want to do that. You want to, as you say, nip it early, get to it early, rather than trying to hang on. Yeah. So please continue. Yeah.
Where did we get to? We got
we've got to if you become invest, get help. So the GP, probably find a GP.
Yeah, find a GP, because typically they'll prescribe some antidepressants, which work, as I said, in probably 60% of people. And if you get to a stage where you can cut that back and you can get back to living again. So if the drugs work, take the damn things. Anything's better than your dog dying every day. if you're looking for the psychologist, you've really got to hunt around there until you get one who is going to tell you about the different therapies, and someone who understands that you don't know what's wrong with you. Depression for me is self-harm. It's illogical. You know the things that are good for you, but you don't do them because you're in your head all the time. You've got your inner critic, and he's at you all the time. It's not Jiminy Cricket there telling you, oh, you know, you're doing your best, Al, you know, keep going. It's really someone who wants to hurt you. So you've got to get out of your head, and then really make sure that your therapist is acting more like a coach for you. That's what I'd try to do, because the plans that I found were pretty ordinary. They work on one or two things rather than the one that I found at the end, this acceptance commitment therapy, where they actually gave you a process. And it was quite simple. They just say, well, you've got to get out of your head. So the first thing you do is do some mindfulness, just get back in the present moment. Then work out what your choice is. You can work towards your values, the things, your principles that you want to live towards, or you can work against them. You can go down the distraction route and TV, or you can get off your backside and do something, take some action, and then be mindful in that action. Mindfulness in daily living. Like my old man used to say, if you're going to do a job, do it properly or leave it alone. So if your mind's not on digging the hole or whatever it is, give me the shovel. I'll fix this. You go and do something else. So it was, you know, that's a pretty simple approach, and you can apply it to everything. You don't have to think about all the little acronyms that they get and all that sort of stuff. Anyhow, and the main one that I said before, that the antidote to depression is activity. They're all pretty common sense things. See your friends and family. Try to help them to understand you and what they can do. Sometimes everyone's walking around on eggshells because they think, oh, gee, we better not say anything. It might trigger him to get it, you know, go back to sleeping. So you've got to try and get a bit of buy-in from them, and they can really help. The gratitude journal, I've heard you speak about that. The research has shown that if you can write down 3 things that you're grateful every day, or grateful for every day, after about a length of time, your mood will improve. You start to accept things rather than always grasping at something that you want all the time. Acceptance of things, I think, is very important. Physical health, your guys doing it with the pod, get out and exercise. It's good for your brain, but in my case, I walk, but just do something. Get off your backside. And, you know, finally, the responsibility for dealing with the condition, it's really how you function in life. I think more than an actual medical disease or anything like that. It's a problem in living, but the responsibility for that lies with you. It's, if you don't do it, no one else can. You're the only one. It's your life. So at the moment,
sorry.
At the moment, I'm getting by. It's a bit of a journey, like life, like, you know, for everyone. It takes a bit of work to keep at it, but I'm enjoying life, and there's only 120 months left, so I'm getting on with it.
Well, and as you say, you keep surfing the waves, whatever the waves are. Keep surfing, and as you say, this paper was your personal experience when you outline in the paper about, you know, cognitive behavior therapy. You talked about ACT in there, the ACT therapy that's listed, so people, as I say, we can get a hold of that. The bottom line is, as you say, you are responsible. It's your inner world, your thinking, your internal operating system, like in the phone. You have to work on it yourself. And we've got the resources there at our BlokesTalk Beachside Facebook page, so people can touch base with us and become a member there, and we can let them know when we're having our next meeting. Alan, this has been fantastic. I'm just going to go through some of my notes, and then I'm going to ask you, is there anything you'd like us to cover? But I'm just in no particular order. Coming from South Wales, the importance of purpose, meaning, and identity. As you say, the 120 months left, and I literally did a podcast only a week or so ago with a guy called John Denton, who is in the business of helping people sell their businesses. And he talks about, don't just plan to sell it, plan for what your life is going to be like after it. Otherwise, the same thing can happen. You work so hard to build the business up, sell it, and you go, what now? And so it's like, where is your meaning and purpose after the sale of the business or after the work? And now, hopefully, you can get back into your love of France and French language and culture and French. Mate, I tell you what, putting on French music and cooking a French meal would be I love, and maybe a bit of French wine, a bit of French rosé. I love your point also about the therapist as coach. It's not just you made the point in the talk the other day of the old how you feeling and how do you feel about that and how do you feel about that, which is really analysis versus okay, mate, you've done the analysis, but now let's talk about action, which Jordan Peterson said, sleep. It's so important, as you say, that sleeping in. I know myself, I've had a bit of a flu the last week and I haven't been down the beach as much. And I've literally, as I felt a bit better, got out, set the alarm to go for a walk in the morning. And then I'll either do my meditation before or after the walk, because meditation is part of, and again, coming back to mindfulness, it's only in the last year or so where I personally have got into Vedic meditation, where I've done meditation, listening to YouTube and so on, which are all very good, but the meditation where you've actually got a coach, a Vedic, like a teacher, and there's an accountability factor. Like, I do a lot of coaching in business, and we talk about the importance of not only action, but you can have an intention to take action, but if there's no accountability from a coach, did you do it or not? That extra layer of accountability from a teacher or a mentor really does. So that someone's going to say, so have you been getting up in the morning? Have you, and I suppose to a certain extent, in your case, Glenn, to a certain extent, was your coach without knowing it. But, so I'm going to be there because Glenn's going to be there in the morning. It's a bit like me with Shane McGurk. Well, Shane's picking me up in the morning, or I'm picking Shane up. So I've got to get up and do this. That commitment to someone else is so important, isn't it?
Yes, and it's that really does push you forward. You've got an obligation. It's your job, almost. And
Yes.
when you're not working anymore, you don't have a job. There's no KPIs. You don't have to do it.
Yes.
So if you make a commitment, that really helps.
And of course, your friend and my friend Paul Robinson again had gone through a cliff after finishing work, and so he'd set up the bucket list groups, which I think you're a member of, one of his bucket list groups, which is a group of blokes getting together, talking about the rest of their lives and where they're at and what's going on, and without actually saying it, of course, they talk about the importance of healing through talking, just by talking to people about where are you at, what's going on, what problems you may have or not have, or how have you dealt with that. Just that, I know myself, over coffee in the morning, we've the sorts of things that people have spoke about. And in our pod squad, we've had people going through cancers, marriage breakups, births, marriages, all sorts of upsets. And one of the guys the other day said, I got this fantastic idea for baby. These guys, Fred and Mel, were having a baby, and they got an idea off our friend Nelson about babysitting and planning for the birth. And they said, the ideas Nelson gave us over coffee that morning have literally transformed our life. If we hadn't got that, and you just got the amount of information exchange through things like Bucket List Group, and Paul also runs the Cottesloe Crooners, the men's choir. It's all that almost the value at right angles. You're there for the choir or the bucket list, but in fact, there's a whole lot of other benefits going on, isn't there, from that gathering and social connection?
Yes, in business, we all know the benefit of working in a team, because 2 or 3 people will come up with a better outcome than just one person.
Yes. Yes.
Other people have got different ideas. You always benefit. I can always walk away with one thing out of every interaction.
Yeah,
and it's surprising we don't do that in our personal life.
yes.
And it certainly does help when you actually sit down with a group of people who it's where it's a safe place for you,
Yes.
and they want the best for you. And if people don't want the best for you, find another friend.
Yes.
You want people to uplift you, not to drag you down. But then again, have the empathy to say, well, this person isn't, it's not that they're dragging me down, they're drowning a bit. I need to help them a bit and see what I can do, even if it's just listening. What do you need, mate? Is there anything I can do? And there's value in that. That's what society is all about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly I know through PodSchool, many times I've said to Shane, what a community that's developed organically. But there's people, the caring. In fact, I did a podcast with Paisley Madison, who is a meditation coach, and we did a whole series of C's, the power of community, connection, being calm, a whole lot of communication, as you say. Compassion is another one. But your Sunrise group is just a as you say, another informal group, but really, in many ways, the Sunrise group was the beginning of the light being shown in your life, wasn't it? Talk about the metaphor there. It's quite incredible. Versus the inner critic who was only too happy to keep. And this is the thing I found, and I think I may have mentioned the other day, highly intelligent people, particularly analytical people, in your case, classic you, Peter Simons, very strong left brain people, the ability to do analysis on numbers. But when you give that inner critic the power of analysis and you start analyzing yourself, as Sadhguru talks about, the intelligence, which said, you want sharp intelligence or blunt? Most people say, I want sharp. And so you start applying a cutting instrument to your inner world. And so it's the danger of, particularly, let's put a workaholic with a highly analytical and highly intelligent brain now working on themselves. Potential danger there. But Wade, well done, mate. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about before we move into that home straight?
I'd just like to add to the comment about mindfulness and meditation.
Yes.
And that is that it certainly has an impact of bringing you into the present moment and typically calming you. I mean, sometimes you can't get rid of the thoughts, but that's your experience for the day. Just let it go. It's just what's happened. No need to beat yourself up about it. But the main thing about it for me is that is to apply it in daily living. It's the application of mindfulness, which is you're in the present moment. If you're doing something, whether it's your tax, whether it's doing some maintenance around the house, whether it's focusing on your swimming or walking, do it mindfully. Don't have your mind a million miles away, because life's what's happening while you're doing that job. And then if you can get lost in time, if you get into that flow state, well, to me, that's the best thing. You've done something mindfully. You're not laughing your head off about it, but gee, you're having a good time with your friends around you and that sort of thing. But that was a key for me, because the mindfulness or the meditation, I felt calm, but I didn't know what to do with it. And it's not so much what you do with it, it's how you apply it in daily living. And that was an important thing for me in moving it around, just to get out of your head and just keeping it simple.
Get out of your head, as you say. As you're doing that, you're reminding me what a very important piece, the meditation people and these days between the Buddhists and the Indians have been onto this for like about 10 to 40,000 years, of the power of just concentrating on the breath going through your nose. It's pretty hard to think of anything else. Even as you're talking there, I immediately was starting to think of just breathing through the nose. And as you concentrate on the feeling of the breath going in through the nose, it's very difficult to be worrying about what's happening at the Democratic Convention or anywhere else on the planet. And so breath, which the Indians have said forever, is by concentrating on the breath, particularly coming through the nose, what that does in terms of bringing you back to the moment. It's such a powerful thing. So the book Breath, which I've just finished reading, James Stanton or whatever his name is, fantastic book on the power of breath, talking of mindfulness as well. Alan, so in terms of leading your best life for the next 120 months and beyond, if I said to you, what motivates the Alan Parker today to lead his best life, particularly for the next 120 months and beyond?
It's my values. We can either, with the goals, if you go for something external, for example, in finance, it's all very nice with what little money I have to get a particular return on it, but that's out of my control, really. Mm-hmm. I can pick, whether it's debt or equity or whatever I put into it. But what I can say is, I'm an analytical investor. And if I can, at the end of the day, success for me isn't getting the 5, the 6% return on it or anything like that. It's being able to say, well, yes, I was analytical today. I did my best and to set that, and I'll just have to see what happens as it goes out. So it's the values or the principles that you live by that are more important than actually the things that you do. It's that's the who am I. And so if you can have that internal, that intrinsic principles like, honesty and integrity, persistence, patience, caring and kindness, if you can attach that to what you do, so, an analytical investor, a consistent golfer, a creative photographer, then to me, have I been creative today? Well, I've done my best at it. I've, looked through all of that, and I'm pleased with what I've got there. Yeah, that's good. I'd like to do some different ones on that, so I'll be off on a tangent. But it's that curiosity. Am I being curious today? That for me is the living, not so much, oh, gee, did I get that footing right when I put it in for the porch? No, I stuffed that up, and then you go in the downward spiral again and think, oh God, I've got to spend tomorrow digging that up. It's those sort of things to me.
That wonderful inner world of yours, the analytical mind. Mate, Alan, it's been absolutely fantastic doing this, and we're going to serve so much value for people that we share it with. I want to thank you so much, and I'll see you at our next BlokesTalk Beachside meeting or somewhere down the beach or around the place. But thank you so much for sharing this and your paper. Much appreciated.
That's great. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
My pleasure. See you soon, mate. Bye.
Yep. Bye, Leigh.